Okay, so this set of notes is 5.13, Reducing Urban Runoff. And so let's go ahead and talk about the environmental consequences of urban runoff. The first thing that we know with urban runoff is that we have decreased infiltration. So that's going to reduce the amount of groundwater that is recharged. Also, we're going to have rain washing the pollutants into storm drains. So any chemicals or oil leaks or anything that might be on the roadways or sidewalks, even on the buildings, are going to be washing off with the rain into our storm drains. Storm drains lead to some sort of a local surface water. So as you can see here, there's lots of different sources of pollution and runoffs, even trash, construction site and industrial site runoff would also be included in that. And so some of the pollutants that are a major issue include salt, sediment, fertilizer, which can lead to eutrophication in our waterways, and pesticides, as well as even some fossil fuel residue like oil and gasoline. All of these things can have detrimental effects on ecosystem. And so a solution would be to create more permeable surfaces. Permeable, if you remember from earlier notes, is just the ability of water to pass through. And so actually specially designing um, pavement that allows stormwater to infiltrate and recharge groundwater is really important. So using permeable pavers allows stormwater to infiltrate into underlying soils. And then this actually will decrease runoff, which decreases the pollutants that are carried into storm drains. And then those pollutants don't reach the local surface water. So that is an ideal solution. It decreases the likelihood also of flooding because now a lot of that water will move through the permeable surfaces and pass into the groundwater where it recharges that groundwater. The issue with these permeable pavements are that they're more costly than traditional pavement. So it's really difficult for municipalities that are already short on funds to actually come up with the funds to pay for those more sustainable choices. So, another solution to reduce urban runoff is to plant rain gardens. These are gardens that are planted in urban areas, especially surrounding storm drains. And so you can see an example of one here. This decreases runoff by allowing it to soak into the garden soil and the surrounding storm drain. Um, and so you can see here the best part of this is that the plants will actually filter out the pollutants, which is really important. This decreases the likelihood of flooding during heavy rainfall as well. And it creates habitat also in urban areas for pollinators. It also just looks nice, like it has like a cultural um, value. If we talk about those cultural services, it has that, aesthetically pleasing value, and it'll help to store CO2 and sequester some of the CO2 out of the atmosphere as well. Another solution is creating more public transit. So, more cars on the road are going to equal more pollutants on the streets. And this then will turn into the runoff after it rains, and so actually taking some of the cars off the street and putting, people into public transit situations instead decreases the motor oil. A lot of our buses and larger public transit vehicles are starting to be run with more alternative fuel sources, so that's important. It also reduces the amount of tire pieces, which is really just a type of petroleum product. um, reduces the gasoline residue and antifreeze that we find on roadways. More cars also equals more lanes and parking lots, which means more impervious surfaces, which just really, increases the problem. And so having less cars would be very beneficial. And then public transit also decreases the urban runoff and the pollutants on the road, like we mentioned before. It also reduces those CO2 emissions, and as another positive benefit, it reduces traffic. Building up and not out is another way to reduce some of this urban runoff. By building vertically, it decreases the amount of impervious surfaces that we're creating. And so you can see if this is a built up area versus this being the built up area, it really reduces those impervious surfaces, which is very beneficial. It can also be combined with green roofs or rooftop gardens to further decrease runoff. So the water, as it hits the top of the building, could actually be hitting a green garden or a green roof, which is planted with plants, before it moves into a storm drain running down the side of the building. That would also filter out a lot of the pollutants that might potentially be running off as well. And so you can see here an example of a green building. That's kind of cool looking. A green roof also sequesters some CO2 and filters out air pollutants as well. And these plants absorb these air pollutants and other pollutants into their stomata, like we've talked about it before, and they store those pollutants in their tissue or in the soil. All right, so our practice FRQ for this section says design an investigation to measure the relationship between the number of trees in a city and the amount of stormwater runoff the city produces. And you'll complete A, B, C, and D, and you can find the answers for these on OneNote under Unit 5 in the content library. Okay, see you next time. And next time we will talk about 5.14 IPM.